We're going to go to Marna, who's on the line in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Marna, you're on the Ken Coleman Show.
Good afternoon, Ken.
How are you?
Thank you for taking the call. I'm
Sure.
doing okay, and you?
Well, I'm living the dream. How can I help?
Well, I was calling because I lost my job in 2010, a job I really enjoyed, and then I got another job, lost that one in 2014 for the same reason, and I'm having trouble with confidence in interviewing for a job again. I've been self-employed since 2014.
Okay. Now, you said you lost both jobs 2012, 2014 for the same reason. Do you mind me asking
Right.
what the reason was?
Does not meet expectations, and neither one of those were delivered by my direct supervisor. They were by the supervisor of the supervisor.
Well, what were the expectations? Do you agree with the fact that you didn't meet the expectations?
Well, in one case, it was kind of unclear. I didn't quite understand, but
Right.
I could summarize by saying, like, nobody can accuse me of not working hard,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe the specific priorities that they expected me to have, I didn't have because I just went forward and did what I thought needed to be done. And sometimes maybe I'd get focused on what they considered the wrong thing, even though the people around me saw that it needed to be done.
Okay. All right. So good. So this isn't a work ethic issue. It's a clarity issue.
No.
Maybe it's a focus
Yeah.
issue. And by the way, you bring up a very good point, Marna. I talk about this all the time. When you take a role, you need to make sure that you know the role. Like, you got to make sure that there's a very clear description of what it is to win in this job. So, for instance, Marna, if you work at Ramsey Solutions, everybody has a one-page KRA, key results area. And it's listed out very clearly what is expected of you. So if that is something that's provided to you, do you think you'd have any kind of issue dealing with that? Like, if I told you this is the thing, or these are the things we need you to do every day, and only these things, meaning you got to get these things done first. You get these things done and you're winning here. If you want to go above and beyond, great. But we need you to do these things. Would you have a problem following that?
No.
Okay, then. So get your confidence back up. Because this isn't a work ethic issue. You're not dishonest.
No.
There's nothing else
No.
going on. And we need to learn from these things, correct? Whether you feel you did something wrong or not, you do know that you can learn something from those two experiences, yes or no?
Yes.
Have you learned something from those?
I've learned something about myself. I just don't know how to talk about that in an interview when I'm presenting myself.
Well, that's okay. What did you learn about yourself? Try it on me. Just tell me.
Well, let's see. I do get super focused sometimes and forget about everything. Like one time, my direct boss would demand me, even though I was salaried, he would demand that I go home for my own good, for my own health and rest.
Mm-hmm.
When I was focusing on something like, well, let me get all these papers organized, or let me, dig into the details of this thing or that thing.
Gotcha.
So it was important, but he would say, hey, you're working too long, go home.
Yeah. What do you think that is? Tell me what that tells you about yourself.
I'm not sure. I mean,
You think there's an obsessive disorder, or is it just a function of you like to clear some things off before you leave? That's what I'm getting at. I don't think it's a big deal, but I think you need to be aware of what's going on.
It could possibly. Another example is at the one job, we were supposed to come up with 3 priorities at like 6:30 in the morning, first thing, by talking to the night shift. And so I would, comply by rattling off 3 things, but they weren't necessarily important. We just had to do that in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
As the day developed, for example, a fire in one of the machines, I wasn't going to, as a quality engineer, I wasn't going to focus on those 3 things. I was going to focus on, okay, what's going on with this machine and how do we recover from this? So I didn't care about those 3 things throughout the day.
I got you. Okay, well, good. Well, so here's the deal. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm serving you by dealing with what you might lack confidence over.
Okay.
We want to know what's driving the doubt, right? That's all we want to know. And I think what's driving the doubt for you is that you had 2 jobs that you felt like you were doing a pretty good job at. You're working hard, but they let you go. And that makes you start to doubt that you have something to offer. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why I've spent a little bit of time on this. Well, none of that's true. I don't know that you were in a healthy environment as far as leadership. There wasn't a lot of clarity there. Some of that's on you, some of that's on them. But the point is,
Right.
now let's move forward. And you called me because you said, I'm struggling with confidence in a job interview. So as you move
Mhm.
forward, I think what you're worried about, if I might pull something out here, you tell me if I'm right or wrong, is that you were let go from your last 2 jobs and now you've been self-employed and you're worried about how that looks when you get into the job interview.
I'm worried about being let go twice. Looks.
Yeah, that's
And
what I'm talking about.
honestly answering, yeah, right. Honestly answering the questions, yes.
Yeah, well, but you got to be honest. But I
Yes.
think what you told me doesn't really concern me. I think you have to say, I would focus on, I was a really hard worker, and to the point that one of my superiors was telling me to go home because I was so dedicated. And what
Mhm.
I've learned is I don't do a good job or I had not done a good job in both of those places of getting clarification from my leader. I'm just a hard worker and always looking to add value. And I now know how to absolutely communicate and clarify my role. I would turn it into a positive in the interview,
Okay. Okay.
right? Because hey, your work
Okay.
ethic was great. And
Mhm.
and and you have a lot of people who will recommend you based on that, correct?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Yeah. So I want you to go to kencoleman.com and download my Get Hired guides, all 3 of them. But specifically, I want you to really dial in on 2 things: the
Okay.
resume resource and the interview resource. I want you to read the whole thing of both of those.
Okay.
And the reason is because you need to learn how to use your relationships and connections to get you a job interview, to where it's not
Mhm.
some cold job interview where you're just applying and then you go in and you
Mhm.
don't know anybody. I want you to really leverage your relationships because of your past, to
Mhm.
where someone is excited to interview you because you've been personally recommended by somebody they know. Do you see the difference?
Yes.
So
Yes.
now when you walk in there, they already have heard good things about you, and you've got a new resume, which you're going to download at kencoleman.com and do it exactly how I tell you to do it. Use the relationships, the connections, and you go in with your head high and say, here's what happened in these previous roles. I now know I need to work in a place where my leadership, my direct report, there's a lot of communication, a lot of transparency, so that I know very clearly what the win looks like, and they just turn me loose and I just fix stuff and make stuff happen because I've got a crazy work ethic. That's how you do this.